Welcome to the Munro Live podcast. I'm Michael Oakes, Munro's VP for Business Development, and today we have Dr. Susan Okray with us to share a little bit of experience, a little bit of background. We've both been at Munro for a long time.
Yeah.
Myself, 30 years. Sue, how long has it been? We've been here a long time.
Yeah.
It's been fun. All right, so Sue is Munro's president, and she oversees our day-to-day operations, including business development activities and the execution of our strategic growth plan. So with beyond Munro's experience, over 30 years in engineering and program management, Sue's worked in all stages of product development, from advanced engineering to product launch. She brings a wealth of experience and knowledge to Munro Associates. Dr. Susan Okray, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks, Mike.
All right. So what inspired you to get into a career, non-traditional, right, for young ladies?
At that time, maybe.
At that time, to get into a career in engineering?
I think probably there were two main factors. There's probably two contributing things were where I grew up and how I grew up. So starting with the how, so I grew up in a family maybe much like yours. My grandfather worked at General Motors in engineering. My father worked at General Motors engineering. So I grew up in an engineering household. That would make a lot of sense. So I got that influence from my father. We worked in the basement together all the time on all sorts of things. So there was a lot of mechanical inclination there. And then if you were much like me, you went to school, and if you were anywhere near good in math and science, they were pushing you towards engineering.
Yes.
You've got to be an engineer. And then, of course, we grew up in the Motor City. So we have GM, Ford, Chrysler, the supply community. So a lot of influence there as well. So generally speaking, I think those main things contributed to the fact that I'm here today. So I did indeed go to engineering school at General Motors Institute, and then pursued several other degrees. Because I really wanted to be a doctor, like a medical doctor, but I decided that we'll just stick with the engineering route, so I just pursued the doctorate route in engineering and manufacturing.
Ah, that's a good alternative.
Yeah, it was fine.
And I know you began your career at GM, and primarily interior related types of positions.
Correct.
I know a lot in seating, right? So could you tell us a little bit more about that? Because I know there's a couple of projects that are very interesting that you worked on.
Right. So I did join General Motors, and I did start my career obviously on the boards, but eventually became a release engineer for interiors and in seating. Seating, for the most part, was my first engagement, and then expanded that through interiors.
And tell us about some of the vehicles. People want to know about the vehicles.
Yeah,
the cars.
Yeah, so I worked on several, but probably the most significant program I worked on for a good deal of my career there was back and we're going way back now, into the 1980s, so late 80s, and 89 to be specific. So I was a release engineer for interiors and seating, and I worked on the Camaro Firebird platform. And why this is kind of significant is because this was my introduction to Sandy Munro. So I'm we're at General Motors on the F-Car platform, and the platform's not doing well. Okay, it's just not very profitable. And at some point, General Motors must have reached out to Sandy and said, "You got to help us get this car back on track." So he accepted that position, and so the whole entire platform team, including manufacturing, had to go through Sandy's courses, and that is how I got introduced to Sandy. And so during that program of training, if you've been through it, a lot of our clientele have been through it, the lean design training, parts elimination and combination, and just general efficiency, design efficiency. It's a big deal. So we got that training at General Motors, and that is where we were able to gain some significant improvements, at least in seating. And we're talking 50% assembly cost savings in seating alone. And then we were seeing this regularly in various systems throughout that vehicle. And that is what put myself and several other individuals of that team in front of the likes of Rob Stemple and Jack Smith. It was pretty amazing for someone, a relatively young engineer, to have that kind of exposure. So it was kind of cool.
Yeah, that was he CEO at that point?
Yes, yeah. So it was kind of cool. But that's not kind of where it ended, because I ended up not only being a release engineer, but I got to launch that product, which is a really good thing to take a product from concept to launch. It's something that most people don't get a chance to do. So that was a pretty significant event in my life. So we're talking several years of my career at General Motors, more than half of it on one platform, going from concept to production. So great experience all around. And those type of successes get reaped on the factory floor, as you well know, right?
Yeah.
So, we were able to gain maybe upwards of 27-30% quality savings at the plant. But you can imagine that probably got translated from the design improvements prior to, right?
Yeah.
I mean, if you can do all that parts elimination and combination, parts that don't exist, don't fail, don't have any quality concerns. So that, I'm sure, was a great deal of the quality improvements that we were able to realize at the plant. And granted, they haven't seen numbers like that in quite some time, so everybody continued to get the accolades from that platform. But it's a true testament to Sandy's methodology and his lean training. It was quite an amazing learning.
Right.
If you probably remember, when you learn, it stays with you forever. It's not, it becomes part of your thought process, and it gets embedded, and you begin to look at products in a whole new way.
Yeah, you see everything in a much different way, and it makes it into, on the plant floor, simpler product.
Absolutely.
To put together. And that showed up as the 93 Camaro and Firebird,
Correct.
right?
Yeah.
The F cars.
Yeah, it was like the fourth generation.
Yeah.
And it launched at Say Therese, so that was the fourth generation,
And I remember really liking those cars.
Yeah,
that
it was hot.
A much different look from the outgoing Camaros. So,
right.
And that, just switching a little bit, that's something that you and I share. Is I met Sandy when he came to General Motors, where I was at the time, and that's when he left Ford, and immediately GM picked him up, and big successes all across General Motors. Remember the 3.8 liter V6 engine up at Potter Lake. There's going to be a very short list of people to remember that. That there was a lot of successes through those years that Sandy was at GM. So, it was fun, and it's fun taking that walk back down memory lane. So, moving on from there, then there's a couple of different jobs in between there. Then Sandy finally convinces you to join Munro.
Right.
Right?
Right.
And so while you're at Munro, in this theme of education, you earned a master's in manufacturing engineering.
Yeah.
And then your doctorate in engineering and manufacturing systems from our own local Lawrence Tech University.
Yes.
Right. Some shout out to I think it's the Blue Devils at Lawrence Tech. And then also, how did you have the time to fit that in? Because we were busy. I know we were busy.
You're
at
right.
work.
We were really busy, but a couple things. If you remember the company back then, we're 25 strong?
Yeah.
We're relatively strong. And so if you remember, that organization is flat, right? I mean, it was flat. It's Sandy and everybody else.
Right.
And we were all self-directed people.
Yeah.
So literally, you got your job, you did your thing, and nobody was in your way. We were all experts at what we did, and it worked out really well. So there wasn't a whole lot of meetings there. And we really we hit the road running, right?
Yeah.
And so additionally,
and we had the flexibility. to
ton
fit
of
some
flexibility. So we were relatively small. So I thought it was relatively easy. Sure, you have to go. I went to school at night, so I had a ton of homework and stuff like that. You sacrifice a little bit of your social life, but anybody in their late 20s and 30s, you're making some sacrifice. Either you have a family and you've got the kids and you're busy. It doesn't matter. One thing or another will displace your time at that age anyway. And Sandy was traveling, his schedule. He was on the road probably 70% of his life back then. He was like a Mad Max traveler. So we never really got to see much of him. That's why we're all very self-directed. We had to be, right?
Right, had to be, So also, probably like moving on from that, How about a little bit of explanation of the type of services we offer here at Munro? Very diverse,
Yes.
right? That a lot of people have bring us a variety of, they need help,
Yep.
right? So
Yep.
maybe you want to touch on that for a minute or two.
You are right, Mike. As a guy in sales, you probably are better equipped to answer this
Yeah.
in more depth. But it's interesting when we first started out in the company, and we had Sandy and these few individuals would go out and they would do these wholesale product,
Yeah.
revolutionary changes, right?
Right.
And so I think it's interesting because in the world of new product development or new product development support, that's a big topic to talk about. But that's kind of what we do on a regular basis. And within that, it's from concept to understanding what the customer requirements are, and all the way to plant facilitation. So we can do it all.
Right.
But you're right. Our customers come with anything along that range. So under the theme of that, we do benchmarking. Everyone knows that. You see it on Munro Live all the time. So we do benchmarking, our own internal as well as for our client base.
Right.
But most of the time, right, we don't do benchmarking just for the fun of it, right? There's something to be gained, and our customers want to know, what is the competition doing? So when we walk through that benchmarking analysis to gain that data and exactly what is the competition doing, how are they different, where do they excel? And that's where we do our design profit analysis.
Mm-hmm.
But that really falls into the area of product optimization. That's what we do a lot of, right? Those
Right.
VVA things, looking for cost and weight reduction opportunities, and doing those workshops with our clients to see how they can overcome some of their deficiencies, right?
Right.
And then bringing our lean design methodology in there that brings costing to the forefront. We want to talk in objective language, right? Design profit gives you those metrics along with cost data, so we know we have some very good metrics for clear decision making.
Right.
So we have that benchmarking. We do our design optimization. We do costing, and all those can fall under that big umbrella of product development support.
Yeah.
So that a lot of people do know us as benchmarking, but we are so much more than that.
Yeah, and I like how you mentioned collaboratively
Correct.
with our customers, right? They don't just send us work and we
No.
analyze and
Yeah.
send it back, right?
No, you're right.
We do that to start with,
Right.
but then we want to work with their engineers. So kind of like what we experienced at
Right.
GM, now when they go back and they look at a design, they're seeing it differently
Right.
from
Right.
this process.
I think that's really important because I can work in isolation from my client, but I think they will accept the answer if they're part of the solution as
Yeah.
well. And I think that if they can see reasonably how we got there and understand the nuance of a new technology or where we've seen it before, I think it eliminates the risk. I'm not saying eliminates,
Reduces,
it minimizes,
yeah.
right, the risk for them, because I think they realize that other people have done it. This isn't that scary. And oh, by the way, the numbers are saying it's going to work. And I think they can get behind those ideas, and I think our success of implementation is higher.
Yeah,
I think you've
more
seen
likely
that.
to follow through with it.
Right.
And it probably makes sense that there's, thinking of our process that we've repeated over and over, same basic process for
Right.
all our customers.
Right.
You might have one or two success stories that come to mind. Anything you want to share with the listeners?
So maybe our listeners have seen these before because I think Sandy has spoken to them, but I still say one of our, and I don't even know if you were, I think you were here for Club Car, right? Were you
Yeah.
here? Yeah, I mean, honestly,
It's
it is.
just different
Yeah.
people. I wasn't on the project.
Right.
But
I think it really kind of demonstrates that the totality of what we can provide and demonstrates the extreme, almost amazing transformation that can happen in product design when it's done right the first time, which Sandy's really all about
Yeah.
that, getting in on the concept stage in this collaborative environment with the team,
Yeah.
all together in one place and without interruption, sort of isolated. So Club Car, I think, really demonstrates that totality of new product development and brings our collaboration of all of the tools, the
Yeah.
collection of all of our tools with collaboration with the client. So if you remember Club Car tip-to-tail analysis, right? Starting at the concept stage, clean sheet kind of thing,
Yeah.
working with their people, trying to get focus groups, understanding exactly what does your customer really want, and not just like the person who's going to drive the golf cart, but what about the lawn maintenance people? What about the people who have to fix these things? Remember that?
Yeah.
We got all the input from the focus groups, developing the styling concepts, and then doing our design profit analysis on those vehicles as well as the competitive set, doing the best of benchmark, the best of best, and then trying to get better than the best of best.
Right.
And working collaboratively with those workshops, developing all these new concepts that didn't exist at that time in a golf cart at all. That new frame structure and that new suspension system, the Surlon coating on the panels for scuff resistance, come up with these ton of patents on the monsoon roof.
Right.
I mean, it was an amazing story.
Yeah, yeah. And if I remember right, they initially reached out to us thinking they just needed some help benchmarking. Right?
Yeah.
They're planning on doing a new vehicle,
Yeah.
and maybe could we get some benchmarking help? And then after a couple of conversations with Sandy and the team, it's like, yeah, we need to we need to sign up for the whole service.
Right. And so you're right. We took that from concept all the way to the first 500 cart build, right? We helped them with the facilitation on the factory floor, setting, speccing equipment. We did we did help them do everything.
Yeah.
It was just amazing. And I don't think our team was very big, but we sure brought the expertise forward when we needed it. And I think the numbers, the results are telling unto themselves, right? We have reduction of parts by 60%. You can do that kind of stuff when it's a clean sheet.
Yeah.
Much harder to do when it's just a refresh, right?
Yeah.
But so you get that 60% parts reduction. What does that mean? 60% less suppliers, 60% less assembly operations, right?
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of the day, their floor space was reduced by 66%. You can see how the trend flows right down to the factory floor. And I mean, it's just an amazingly efficient design. The cost was...
And then it flows right
it
down
just-
into
It did.
profitability.
Yeah, because they captured the
raking it
market
in.
share, right?
Yeah.
They captured the market share from 32 to 80% of the market, and came up with a lower manufacturing cost that allowed them to capitalize on huge profits. So it was a huge success story.
And they're still the preferred choice of the three major
Yeah.
competitors.
Yeah.
For
So that was
Yeah.
like one of the biggest ones, because I mean we had a lot of patents on that. We didn't.
Yeah.
I mean they had a lot of patents
Yeah,
because
right.
that was amazing. So that's one type of project that sort of encompasses all of the tool sets that we can bring to bear. But then there's other work patterns, which I know you know about as well, as when we work with some of our OEM clients and we do sort of this embedded support thing, where we come to your house and we help you with design optimization and cost reduction. And so we become an extension of your team.
Yeah.
And then that's a true collaborative effort. And again, those are efforts that can glean anywhere from 40 to 100% return on your investment.
Right.
I mean, it's that's a good work pattern for us as well.
Right. That's impressive how our teams can take the data and distill it down to actionable ideas working with the home team.
Right.
It's I'm always impressed with our teams and how they turn that over. So
I definitely think that the reoccurring theme is this collaborative effort that really makes the whole, harmonizes the whole process, brings it all together, and really can propel in implementation success. I think that's a really big deal. But Mike, there are so many success stories. We could, Sandy always said, from Barbie to the space station.
Yeah.
We go from buses to bombs, medical, aerospace. So many industries we have influenced and worked in, and that's kind of what makes our talent base really strong.
yeah, in a half hour, I'm going to be talking to a customer about medical products.
Right.
So yes, it's we're based in Metro Detroit, so a lot of automotive
Sure.
and automotive related, but
Boy, we
the
touch everything.
principles apply everywhere.
Yeah, they can be applied to any product. True.
So so Sue, we touched on the fact that Munro is located here in Metro Detroit. It's easy application, obvious application for the principles of lean design for automotive. But what I think many times people don't realize is that the principles probably we see greater improvements come in industries outside automotive. I remember
Right, yeah.
thinking that when
Yeah.
I joined here, that
Right.
this concept is kind of old. Like,
How is it that you
how
don't-
long is this business going to go on?
Yeah.
And that was 30 years ago.
Yeah.
And I noticed that every time I go to a company outside of automotive, they need it even more.
Yes.
There's
Yeah.
more opportunity at those companies. So what,
Right.
any comments on
Yeah. You know, you're
what
right.
some of those industries
You're
are?
right, Mike. So I said before that Munro services just about every industry. We are literally doing medical and airplanes, white goods, commercial products like heavy industry,
Yeah.
Submarines. We have done airplanes. We have done. It's so diverse. Like literally, when he said Barbie to the space station, almost everything is in between.
Yeah.
We are. It's because the principles are universal. They apply to everything. But I think you're right. So what makes things a little bit different in automotive, and I think white goods might be close to this, is a very competitive, cost-sensitive market, and because of that, they have to progress technology often. They have to keep moving.
And they have volumes.
And
that
they have
can-
have volume. So you're right, on the commercial, the white goods, it's high volume.
Yeah.
On automotive, high volume. And so you have to get very efficient in what you do. Otherwise you're gonna lose money faster, right?
Yeah,
So
yeah.
that's how that works. So they have learned to become very efficient. I think, and just because we're in the auto industry, we have gleaned onto some of these wonderful high volume production processes, material choices that are very efficient and effective. But in the lower volumes, they don't have that type of pressure, so they don't maybe think or consider those. But that's where we can bring all of that technology from the auto industry or aerospace.
Yeah.
They come from a different place, right? They have very unique material selections because they
Yeah.
have high performance standards. So between the aerospace on the material side, automotive and white goods on the high volume side,
Yeah.
every other industry can learn and glean from those industries, and we can bring that knowledge forward.
Right, material
Science,
innovation, process innovation, maybe
yep.
some suppliers that
Right, that they not heard
Yeah.
of before.
Yeah,
It-
and I'm glad you mentioned that, the low volume versus high volume, that we can bring our experience of from higher volume products and look for the applications
Right.
for lower volume.
Right.
That lot of opportunities there.
Yeah,
So,
they all have their unique concerns and challenges, but
Yeah.
there are answers out there, and we've likely have seen most of them.
Yes. How about, like, we're having fun with what we've done with a lot of customers, but there's things we can't talk about so much.
Yeah.
But how about any comments on some things we're looking forward to that, particularly with electric vehicles, right? Sandy made the call, geez, it's at least 6-8 years ago that
Yeah.
that's the future, and that's where we are focusing a lot
Right.
of our analysis, benchmarking, costing skills.
Yeah.
Any thoughts on where we might be headed with electric vehicles?
I'm not certain where we're going to head with electric vehicles. However, I will say that we continue to look at which technologies can propel EVs even further. And so part of what we continuously do here at Munro, and you know this very well, we spend a lot of time looking for innovation. So we have a lot of suppliers that will come to us, so we're very active with the supply base so that they can showcase some of their newer technologies. So that's kind of how we can stay abreast of what's going on in the industry and how we can apply that to any vehicle, including EVs. So
Yeah.
EVs are sort of leading the way in terms of technology innovation. However, we work with material suppliers and
Right.
see how their new materials can apply to, for example, like we did SABIC and the battery tray, for
Right.
example, right?
Composite
We're looking
tray, yeah.
composite trays. We're looking for ways materials can be applied to any part of the vehicle, but EVs are something we focus on a regular basis. But we are working and scouring the world for battery technologies. You know, Sandy just came
Yeah.
back from a company with a polymer battery. I mean, we're still trying to keep abreast of solid-state batteries, fuel cells. casting technology. So I mean,
Yeah.
we are looking through the supply base, and people are coming to us with their new technologies. Hey, Sandy, have you seen this? This is
Yeah.
kind of cool. And we try to vet those technologies and see if there's some real juice behind these things. So that's
Right.
one thing we continuously do to keep ourselves relevant in the industry and always wanting to give our customers the very best, latest technology to keep them ahead of their competition. And on the EV front, I think we're all well aware that the Chinese are out there with their EVs at a very affordable price point. So
Yeah.
we continuously try to look at what the Chinese are doing, what technologies they're bringing forward, and so yeah, we looked at the Cybertruck, but there are other vehicles that we have to keep our eye on, and I think our next big step on EV evolution or study or analysis has to be on some of those Chinese vehicles that are out there today.
Oh yeah, for sure. There's and not just in the automotive space, right? There's there's innovative products coming out from a lot from the Far East, but in Europe. And you're right. We that's always been a priority at Munro is how do we deliver innovation to our customer. So, yes, thank you for bringing that up. Also, many people don't know we have a whole separate building, a
Right.
separate group
Right.
focused on defense programs.
Yep.
Can talk about those even less, but
Right.
is there anything you could share with us to give us a little bit more of a taste of how we help some of these defense companies?
So you're right, Mike. We have a defense team, and its purpose is to work on government projects, military programs, projects with government primes or any individual company that works on military product. And so that's their client base. It's just not commercially based. And we essentially do firewall those people from the commercial side. That's why they reside in a separate building. But quite honestly, our services don't change that much at all, right?
Right.
We have a core set of services. They apply to, as you said, any product, so defense is no exclusion there. So the same sets of products and services we provide also on the defense side. And I think the focus just might be a little bit different. They're still heavily focused on cost and design optimization, but we spend a little bit more time now in the defense on production facilitation. So we're talking building construction assistance, plant layout, equipment selection, just production readiness in general. I can see that there's been a sort of influx of those types of services, but all of our services apply to defense equally.
Yeah, so and I'm glad you mentioned that because typically, historically, a lot of focus on the product design, get it simpler, but we both know in the a lot more work. Boy, when I stop and think about it, a lot more work in the how do we make more production
Right.
part of the business after we've done with our design. How do we make a lot of these now?
Right.
So that's that's definitely a big part of our business now. Switching gears a little bit here, we did mention back at the World Congress, SAE, that we had officially partnered with a longtime collaborator, friend to Munro, AutoDatas. And this, could you expand on that a little bit? The like where you see that venture heading in the future?
Yeah, so we'll talk a little bit about, so we did announce, like you said, we have a strategic alliance with a company called AutoDatas. So they have a subscription-based model that you can purchase that includes cost and sort of just benchmark information on mostly Chinese vehicles because they're located in China. So that Chinese database of vehicles is quite important to those who are competing in this industry because it's a good benchmark that you need to consider going forward because they just their cost basis is a little bit more affordable than ours at this point.
And it's interesting to see how they solve the same problems we deal with in engineering cars here.
Right.
So it's interesting to see somebody else
So
how they do things.
You're right. So we don't have access to those vehicles. So this is one way for Munro to to gain access and visibility to those vehicles on a very detailed level. So our typical engagement would be one where we have a partner that a customer that we both can be involved in. So they want access to the database, but they also want some analysis done, whether that be benchmarking, cost analysis, workshops. So on those clients where we can collaborate, those are the types of engagements that work well with AutoDatas. So those are the projects currently we are working with. Are those where we can serve a common customer.
Right.
And offer different sides of a solution for them.
Right.
And that's kind of where we are today with them. In terms of some of the future, so honestly, we exist to help our clients. I mean, that is what we do. We want to make them better than they are today. And one of the ways we try to do that is just staying on the forefront of technology. So you talk about, like, where do you see this heading in the future? At the end of the day, we just really have to continue to do those benchmarking activities that we do today, staying really involved with our supplier data, our supplier clients, and help us get that information on what is happening, what is the new technology you are bringing forward, whether it's materials, whether it's on solid-state batteries or castings or whatever it is. I mean, battery technology is a moving target.
Yeah.
I don't think we've settled on what is the best motor out there yet. What is the best way to architect a battery? None of these things are settled yet.
Right.
So I think all these things are issues that we are going to keep our eye on and see how they progress and learn where those new technologies are moving. So
Right.
that's just kind of, I think, what we do for a living, and we just have to continue to pursue that.
See how others are doing things, and how we can help our customers apply that. So,
Right.
yeah, I agree. So how about this whole Munro Live thing and Sandy
Yeah.
being an influencer?
Yeah.
Like, what do you think about that? How about some candid comments?
Well, so Munro Live, I think it's an awesome platform. I think without Munro Live, I'm not sure the word on Munro would have been out there. It's like, who's that Munro people? Now, granted, it's very focused on our benchmarking activity, but it definitely gets the word out, right?
Yeah.
But I think we have a pretty good following, pretty impressive, being that we didn't start it that long ago. So a lot of people know who we are.
Yeah.
And you're right, Sandy is quite the icon,
Yeah.
right? I can't go anywhere without somebody noticing him, that's for
Yes.
sure. But I think what I really like about, I guess, Munro Live is it does showcase our talents, okay? We have an amazing team of people, and yes, Sandy's wisdom is displayed on the channel. I'm very proud of the fact he gets the opportunity to be on Munro Live and demonstrate a lot of what we have done and can do for our client base, and all the expertise that we can bring forward. And I think it's a great platform for some of our people. We have amazing people here, and we get to showcase some of the talents that we have in place. We have a ton of people who are very deep in expertise in some areas that blow my mind. I mean, they're really very, very good. So I think the channel is a healthy aspect of Munro, and I think it puts us on the map, and I think it is nothing but a contributor to Munro. I think it's an amazing channel.
Yeah, I agree. And I think it does what you and I experienced when we sat in a workshop the first time with Sandy, and I received most of the calls through our sales channels, that there's always, there's not a week that goes by that I don't get somebody that, hey, I remember Sandy from his company I was at before, and I'm at a new company. And we need help.
Yeah.
And I said, you called the right place.
Yeah.
So
You're right.
For that broader audience in social media to get that experience that we had 30 years ago. So
it's good.
I like that as a vehicle for our message.
And certainly, if you know Sandy, he's a good storyteller. So he is not.
No shortage of stories.
He's not. No, so there's an endless. Munro Live is very fortunate. There's an endless supply of stories and commentary from Sandy. He's never without an answer or a comment. So that's good for him. But I'm excited for him that he gets to have this platform to pronounce some of his wisdom and I'm happy for him. I am.
Yeah. And it's
Yeah.
good for business too.
It is. It's very good because you're right. People either
Yeah.
call you, say, I attended some workshop that Sandy gave. We went that lean design training and blah, or
Yeah.
I saw on Munro Live. Blah, blah. You know, it's
Yeah.
one of the two things that 80% of the phone calls that probably come in probably start with, I saw you on Munro Live, and there it comes. The rest of the story.
So, Sue, I introduced you as Susan Okray,
Yes.
but we also know that you're Sandy's wife.
Yes.
So help us understand that a little bit.
Yeah.
So most of the time you're
Yep.
going by Susan Okray,
Okray.
but
Right, yeah, because my business name is Susan Okray, my legal name, Susan Munro. So most of my career, I was Susan Okray, right?
Mm.
So since I'm in the business world, and I happen to be married to the guy in this company, I guess my thought process was the following. So I work in this company, and you introduce me, and if you introduce me as Sue Munro, you might have one impression that, oh, she's Sandy's wife, that's why she's here, or does she add any value at all other than Sandy's wife?
yeah,
And so I want people to realize that, no, I have a career of my own.
and very successful
yeah, so-
before you even met Sandy.
Right, so I kind of wanted to preserve that part of my identity
Yeah,
so that you would evaluate me on who I am and not just Sandy's wife. Because you might treat me instantly differently if you knew that.
Yeah.
So I just kind of want to stand on my own credentials, and you can make your judgment call based on that, not the fact that I'm Sandy's wife, which is a real pleasure in itself, but
Yeah.
I kind of,
you can be both.
I'm hoping I
Right.
can be both. Yeah.
Those can coexist together.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't blame you. Being the father of 3 daughters, I would encourage my daughters to do the same.
Yep, there's some independent identity there.
Yes.
Yes.
Sue, I want to thank you for taking the time to share with our Munro Live audience some of your background,
Thank you.
some stories of what happens here at Munro Associates. So there's probably a few of you out there that watch this podcast thinking maybe Munro could help you. I suspect we can. You need some help with to improve the profitability of your product. Typically, our customers have realized that they have a proof of concept that's mostly working, but it's going to be difficult to build.
Mm-hmm.
And it might not be profitable. That's when they call us for some help on redesigning their product. And also, they probably need some help scaling up production. And that's where that's the typical calls we get. So if that's where you're at right now, please give me a call. Again, Michael Oakes, and I can be reached at sales@leandesign.com, and we have a quick conversation, and I suspect we can help. So thanks again, Sue,
Thank
and
you, Mike.
we'll see you next time.